That was my exact reaction to that post that the Detroit Lions had made. Now, my camera might be a little bit loud, or my microphone. Sorry, just turn your phone down or whatever you're watching on down, because I'm still working on the sound here. But that was my exact reaction to Frank Ragnow, that post right there about the Detroit Lions post. Now I'm like, why are they just posting Frank Ragnow? And then I'm checking the comments just to see like what people think it is. And then I see one of the first comments that pops up says, he's back. And then I'm like, I'm about to jump out of my seat. And then I scroll up a little bit on Twitter, a little bit more, and according to Ian Rappaport, this is real. Frank Ragnow is coming out of retirement. I mean, you can't make this up, dude. We just got the gift sent from God right here. This is unbelievable. This changes the whole trajectory of the rest of the season, in my opinion, for the Detroit Lions. It really, really does, and how I view the rest of the season could go. Now, this is a couple other updates we got here, according to Ian Rappaport a couple minutes later. The Lions' offensive line just got a lot better, as one of the game's greats of all time will return. Center Frank Ragnow is unretiring. Sounds like he's in shape and ready to roll sooner rather than later. And then Adam Schefter, about 20 minutes ago, posted this as well, with more of an update on his return and availability, saying Frank Ragnow's first chance to play for the Lions will come next Thursday versus the Cowboys, as he cannot play tomorrow on Thanksgiving, though it is considered unlikely for now next week, per source. A potential return to play date is December 14th at the LA Rams 2 weeks from now, so in week 15. So this is big news for the Detroit Lions. I mean, this just changes the whole trajectory, man. You could not ask for a better return or addition to this football team right now. I really don't think you can. Now, I'm going to bring this in too. I wasn't planning to make a preview video this week just because it was on Thanksgiving, but I might as well bring it in now because it won't take nothing but 2 minutes. The injury report has been released as well. I've not seen any roster moves and elevations been announced yet, but we will for sure be getting some with this injury report. It's a long injury report. So that Frank Ragnow return news was some of the biggest news we possibly could have got, but then we got some bad news right after it with the injury report coming out. Let's see if I can pull it up here. Yes, I can. This is the injury report. Graham Glasgow has been ruled out with a knee injury, so I wonder if this has anything to do with Frank Ragnow's potential return to the Lions. If Graham Glasgow has a serious injury and it could be out for a decent amount of time. Kirby Joseph has also been ruled out. Josh Pascal has been ruled out. He practiced full on Monday and then no practice for the last 2 days. And his deadline to return was this week. The Lions have to make a decision on him, I believe, today, if they're going to activate him from NFI. If they do not activate him from NFI today, then I believe he is out for the season. So the fact that he practiced Monday and then had not practiced all of the next 2 days, and then the fact that he's been downgraded to out, I think either he re-aggravated something in his knee, or the Lions don't think they need him back, or he's not developed like they want him in practice yet from the injury. I think he's going to be out for the season, unfortunately, for Josh Pascal. It sucks for him a lot because he's in the contract year. But Clay Freeman, Brock Wright, also out. And then there's all your questionables. Arnold, Davenport, Decker, Frazier, Ratwood, Sewell, Teslavaki, all questionable. Brian Branch and Jacob Saylor's off the injury report. Davenport has to make a decision to return from IR next week. Frazier has to make a return this week. I'm assuming Davenport and Frazier will be back. I highly doubt Pascal. So there's your Lions injury report. Not great, all right? But back onto the Frank Ragnow news and Graham Glasgow being out. I wonder, like I said, if this has to do with Graham Glasgow having now a serious injury with him being out and not practicing all week. Now, I don't really think that's going to be the case because I think they would have already placed him on injured reserve if that was the case. But the Lions did open 3 spots a couple of days ago on their roster. I think it was yesterday. They ended up releasing Quentin Jefferson, Nick Whiteside, and Arthur Millette. Quentin Jefferson and Nick Whiteside wasn't too surprising to me. However, Arthur Millette was. I understand our DB room is very deep, but he has been one of the best depth DBs we have had on this roster under Dan Campbell. I mean, he's played out of his mind when he's had to step in for all the injuries. So I'm a little bit surprised that he got cut. Nick Whiteside also played very well, but I expected him a little bit more. to get cut because he hasn't played as much as Millette when he stepped in there. But Quentin Jefferson was not surprising at all. He's only been active for one game this year on the 53. For the time he's been on the 53, he's only been active for one game. I'm assuming all those guys will be brought back on the practice squad. However, Arthur Millette did post a cryptic tweet on Instagram, which made me think it was a finish line with a salute emoji. There's the finish line emoji with the salute. So it makes me think potentially that's an end of a run for him, and he's moving on to the next phase of his career. But if not, I do think all those three guys return to the practice squad at some point. But there is your Lions injury report and roster moves. Now, if Graham Glasgow is going to be okay, this is even bigger for the Lions offensive line because Frank Ragnow will take over at center, and then that means most likely Graham Glasgow will move back to left guard. Now, obviously, in my opinion, he is the better center and right guard than left guard. All right, but Ratledge is not going to move to left guard, and then they're obviously not going to move Ragnow to guard. So that means Glasgow will go back to guard. Now, I think this question brings up to how will the Lions' interior offensive line shape up for the playoffs if we make it? Because, we have to add that asterisk right now. If we make the playoffs, how the Lions' offensive line will look. If everybody stays healthy in the interior, will Christian Mahogany take over for Graham Glasgow at guard? You have to think about it. Because Christian Mahogany, Dan Campbell says he expects him to return late in the year, most likely in the playoffs. And if that is the case, does he take Graham Glasgow's job? I don't think so, but I think he could because, in my opinion, he has played better than Glasgow when he's been in there. It's just with Glasgow's experience more with Ragnow than Mahogany does. So you kind of got to base it off that. But we'll see. But Frank Ragnow coming out of retirement, this is absolutely the biggest news we could have got. 100%. Now, Frank Ragnow is also under contract now, I believe, for next year because he signed that 4-year deal in 2021 or 2022, 4-year extension. So he is, I believe, under contract right now for next year. So now it poses the question, will he play next year? I'm not going to really talk about next year right now because I don't think he will play. I think he will probably end up retiring at the end of the year again, which is completely fine because the fact that he's already coming out of retirement is huge. But since he has a chance to since he's under contract next year, I think he's got a cap of $11.8 million next year. That's huge. That's not a lot of money. Well, clearly worth that. And that changes the whole offseason plans, in my opinion, for the Detroit Lions when it comes to in the draft. When it comes to in the draft, it changes the whole entire plan. Because then at that point, you don't really have to draft a center too early. No earlier than probably the third round at that point. Or second round, but definitely not going to draft one in the first at that point. And it changes the whole Lions offensive line look for the future, specifically next year. So, huge news for the Lions. Frank Ragnow, this is real. Frank Ragnow is returning, unretiring from the Detroit Lions and returning. I thought there was no chance. I thought there was a better chance that Zadarius Smith would come out of retirement and he would end up getting released by the Eagles if he was asked for, because he has to ask for his release and then to return to the Detroit Lions. So he would have to come out of retirement, ask for his release from the Eagles, because once you unretire, you immediately go back to your team that you were on previously if you were under contract, which Zadarius Smith was. So then he'd be released from the Eagles, and I think he would return to us. I think there's a better shot that would happen than Frank Ragnow coming out of retirement and returning for us. When Frank Ragnow retired, I thought that was 100% it. Now, again, the retirement word is continuing to be a joke. It's not. I don't think retirement is a 100% defined word anymore because, you just see Brandon Graham came out of retirement earlier. Now, Frank Ragnow comes out of retirement. You saw him multiple times last year. So that word is a joke to this point. But Frank Ragnow, unbelievable. Welcome back. This is the best news we could have got for us the year. It really, really is. This is going to help the development of Tate Ratledge and Mahogany as well, even if it's just for the rest of this season. This is unbelievable. If Glasgow is okay, our offensive line goes from being average to below average, in my opinion, when everybody's in there and starting, to great once again. It really, really does, because Tate Ratledge has been very good prior to this point. He's improved in pass blocking, but he's been excellent in the run blocking. Mahogany still got a lot of developmental to do in the pass block and run block, but he's been very decent in the run block. So if Frank Ragnow can continue to develop these guys. For the future, the offensive line looks bright, but even for this year, the offensive line looks to be going back to its great form, hopefully, that has been in years past. So, one pride go Lions. Frank Ragnow is back. Unbelievable. A prayer or a dream has been answered for Brad Holmes, Dan Campbell, the Lions organization, Lions fans. A prayer has been answered. That's not a dream. A prayer has been answered. I just unbelievable. Frank Ragnow back. Happiest I've been for a Lions fan all season long. No question. I've not been happy about the Detroit Lions, how they've done anything, or how they've played since the trade deadline. This changes it. So, one pride Lions changes the whole trajectory of the rest of the season, in my opinion. Huge. I mean, absolutely huge.